favorite button. All right, we're good to go.
Welcome everyone to the Technical Advisory Committee. As always, we will start with introductions, which I will just read off for the sake of time. From SCTA, we have Shauna, James, Drew, Chris, Dana, and RCPA, Ross. Welcome. Also RCPA, Tanya, sorry, didn't see you there. From County TPW, Nader, City of Santa Rosa, we have Rob Sprinkle and Nancy Adams. Petaluma, Ken Eichstead. From Cloverdale, subbing in for their engineering department is Kevin Thompson. And from Windsor, Mona, County Parks, Elizabeth. Sonoma, Roner Park, Edie Takata. And just signing in, representing Sebastopol, is Mario Landeros.
Just made it.
Let me know if I missed anybody. Not seeing anyone from the public, and just letting everyone know, I have to jump off of this meeting a little bit before 3 if we run that late, and Shauna, of course, will take over. So seeing no one from the public, no public comment. Item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes of October 27th. Does anyone have any comments, additions, changes? Seeing none, that will pass unanimously. Onward to item number 4, SB 743 implementation update. Chris?
Thanks, Larry, and good afternoon, everyone. I just have a few items to update everyone on today. So Caltrans has provided a few additional resources and some additional guidance on SB 743 implementation that I just wanted to let everyone know about. One is related to HOV lanes, and Caltrans has actually come out and said generally HOV lanes should be treated as general purpose lanes when looking at VMT production. Unless you do significant analysis indicating that strict enforcement will actually be happening in place for those lanes. So that isn't, I guess, super relevant to the local projects, but for state highway projects, that could be a factor. Also on VMT mitigation, they provided some additional information on banking and exchanges. So there's a legal team at UC Berkeley that's been working on this. So they've provided some information on that. And I'll drop a link in the chat where you can find out more about this information on the Caltrans website. And they've also provided some information on assessing mitigation that requires ongoing funding. So for example, if you're mitigating VMT production by providing improved transit headways, how to handle that. So there's some documentation and information on the Caltrans website about that. And then probably maybe one of the more interesting bits of guidance that Caltrans has provided is that in general, new capacity on class 5 through 7 roads, so local and collector roads, can probably be screened out of VMT analysis if the project also is found to substantially improve conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit. So there's more information on the Caltrans website, but just wanted to let you know about especially that last item, and I will go ahead and drop a link to the Caltrans SB 743 page in the chat. And for these items, you'll actually want to scroll down to the SB 743 hot topics section. So you can click on links and find out more if you so desire on these topics. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's my report, Mr. Chair.
How do you take questions, Larry? Do you just
jump
in?
I did the very formal thank you, Chris. Go ahead, Rob. But
okay, that was the look. Okay, we'll learn that. So, what do they consider a substantial pedestrian and bicycle improvements? I guess, or did they give any kind of definition on that?
Not really.
Perfect.
Yeah, I provide the link here. So there's like a 1-page narrative on that. So hopefully they'll provide some more guidance on that, but it's probably just, you know, in your narrative and your your environmental work, you know, making that connection. But yeah, hopefully we'll see some more information on that. But that was one thing that jumped out at me in their last SB 743 update that I thought you may all be interested in.
Great, thank you.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so Rob, he just knows, we were at like, our minds are together, right? So I had that same question, but so if I understand it correctly, then there are possibilities and instances and circumstances where if a jurisdiction is like building a road or increasing capacity, then if that facility would increase bike and ped access, then there's a possibility that it could be exempt. Do I have that correct, Chris?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
According to the new Caltrans guidance for those, you know, for those classifications of roadways, right? So collectors, you know, anything a collector and down, right? So,
Down. Oh.
yeah. So arterials aren't
Okay,
covered under that.
Okay. Okay. So that's a fine distinction. All right. Thanks.
So the impetus is that collectors and above don't have pedestrian increases with new projects then, I guess? Is that what we're saying?
It'd be arterials and above, you couldn't make that connection. So, according to the state.
And that's, I'll just follow up with Steve. That's a curious thing because, you know, that's where, I mean, not only do we have bike and ped service, but that is where our transit service is. We don't typically have transit service on collectors and below and residential.
Right.
So multimodal access is really the where we struggle with is arterials and above, right? You know,
Yeah.
resident collectors are a little easier to navigate with ped facilities. And there are no transit facilities there just by virtue of what they are. So that is an interesting dilemma. I see it, right? Just thoughts.
Yeah, mass transit in the local neighborhoods are those little electric scooters that Rob keeps dropping around the city.
Hey, they shouldn't be there right now.
All right, thanks, Chris. Not seeing any other questions. All right, we will move on to the star of the show, item number 5, project collaboration. James?
All right, thanks everyone. This next item, I'm going to go ahead and take you through about half of the staff report, just with a little oral presentation, and you know, get all of you in the frame of mind of where we want to try to get at the SCTA RCPA. We called this item project collaboration and project lists and fund tracking. We're looking to plan, fund, and implement projects that meet our goals. We do that by having good fundable projects ready to go, and we want to have that bench when funding comes available, so we can be competitive on that regional, state, and federal stage. You know, bringing those dollars to Sonoma County. As I'm going through, just highlighting some things in the staff report, those of you that do have the agenda pulled up, I would recommend that you just jump to page 9 and just start perusing that list as I'm talking through the main points of the staff report. It is a list that is, or a list of project lists that is, you know, ripe with opportunity for improvement. The Go Sonoma strategic plan that's going to be implemented over the next year, not implemented, it's going to be the Go strategic implementation plan that will be developed over the course of the next year. We are required, based on the ballot measure, to have that strategic plan done by the end of the 2023 calendar year. But, you know, the SCTA and RCPA staff want to take a more holistic view of these lists and don't want to miss an opportunity to better align them for both planning, funding, and implementing of projects. The issue that's been laid out in the staff report is how can SCTA best manage project lists to be ready for funding opportunities and project delivery? How should SCTA collaborate with our advisory committees and the board to ensure good communication and project delivery. Which existing lists can be combined and or consolidated? The recommendation today is not an action item. It's not a recommendation by staff. It's simply for the TAC to provide input. Our summary of the item: the implementation of GO-SONOMA will include quarterly reporting on funded projects. This differs from the current Measure M process, which is annual. Quarterly reporting will need new collaborative process between project sponsors and the SCTA RCPA. In addition, SCTA uses many types of project lists, from planning to implementation and closeout, that can be better coordinated. Staff will be issuing a request for proposals from the SCTA's Project Program Management on-call list and is asking for that TAC input on the scope of work, as well as possible opportunities to consolidate project lists and better improve our collaboration between SCTA and the project sponsors. Going into a little bit of background here, how to manage data, right? And manage those lists. The core principles are centralized data, collaboration, and consistency. As we transition from Measure M to GO-SONOMA, there is this excellent opportunity in front of us to manage these lists. The core principles will require workflows for data collection and reporting that have historically included the use of Microsoft Word and Excel files, along with some minimal Microsoft Access work. Project numbering and GIS mapping are two key features to implement across all lists for consistency. SCTA staff plan to start by evaluating our current business practices and looking for improvements. So that list that you're looking at on page 9, that is our current business practice, right? And that is what we maintain, each one of those lists individually, and update them as needed. So, there's some of those lists that SCTA manages, some of them the jurisdictions, each of you manage, others, regional or state entities manage. So, your planning project list would be like the CTP that feeds into the RTP. We had the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which is now going to become our CAT plan, or our countywide active transportation plan. There's becoming more and more opportunities for resiliency and adaptation projects, of which we really don't have a lot of robust lists or projects ready to go at a regional level within the SCTA RCPA. So there's a great opportunity there. Of course, this being the TAC, there's that annual PID list that we'll get together and look at which PIDs we want Caltrans to work on. We were really successful on the last round of TIRSIP and having a transit capital list consolidated and ready to go, as well as each of the jurisdictions' general plans. That, the transportation element's the fairly obvious low-hanging fruit, but there's other projects within those general plans that we would want to have on our radar and to know where they are in the developmental phase. Then as you move out of planning, you get the call for projects, and that call for projects, we have the 2021 SCTA funding program, or we ended up calling it the SCTA funding program cycle 1, where we aligned many fund sources. Well, there's a lot of projects left that we have very detailed project information. What do we do with that list going forward? Those unfunded projects that aren't going to be recommended for funding in February when we finalize that at our board. There's ATP projects that are going to end up being unfunded. How do we want to manage those unused grant applications and lists of projects that we know are ripe for delivery and construction only funding? And then as you move from the calls for projects, there's the actual programming and implementation list. This is your Measure M strategic plan, your annual report info sheets. The GO-SONOMA projects are going to require the same type of information. We manage separate lists for our Rohnert Park traffic mitigation fee, our TFCA program, our TDA3 program. For the federal projects, MTC manages that information within their FMS system, and that's something that, Shauna takes something to the board every June and December. You all saw it at the last TAC meeting. It'll be going to our board a week from Monday as to the status of our federal delivery. There's the state systems, which is the CTIPs, CalSmart, which you're all updating your local streets and road project lists on. You've either done it recently or going to do it again, as well as each jurisdiction CIP, right? You all have these robust CIPs. Like, is that information really feeding in well with the management of information here with your, regional partner at SCTA to make sure that we're collaborating as good as possible to get these things delivered. With that, there's 4 questions in the staff report itself, but I'm going to go ahead and paste those 4 questions into the chat. I've done minor modifications to numbers 1 and 4 just to try to do a little bit of a deeper dive. I'm going to read through the questions. So the first question is, which project list might be combined? I did add to that. So what do we do with those unfunded projects with grant applications like the 2021 call for projects or those ATP applications? Question number 2, how can SCTA collaborate with existing systems used by your jurisdiction? Like, do you have stuff that can feed in that we can, easily migrate data between us? The next one is, how are the existing Excel and Word documents working for your collaboration and or coordination with SCTA, right? So if that's really working for this group, I mean, I want to hear if it is or it isn't, what direction do we want to go? It has been fairly error prone and challenging in how we manage that information through an email system and a file structure in the past. An example, Measure M annual report is on the agenda today. It's gone to the CAC for comments. You can all have a review of that as well if you click on the link. But that's purely just exchanging Word documents between us and some Excel files. The question number 4, I've enhanced a little bit as well, but in early 2023, so we're basically, MTC is going to take some action on OBAG 3 in January, then we'll be going to the board likely in our February meeting to approve the full funding plan for cycle 1, what we're calling it. There's all those projects that are unfunded. I mean, and not all the projects are unfunded, but there was both challenges and benefits to aligning those fund sources, right? So, and we did have some struggles as we were working through it together. It was the first time that we had aligned so many fund sources or multiple fund sources in one call for projects. So some feedback on that, on how that process went. And then those of you that have been around a bit longer, like, 4 or 5 years ago, when we did the last call for projects for the CTP, where we're basically saying, give us all your projects, everything, so we can have this comprehensive visionary look at Sonoma County. How did that process work for you? And did we really capture those relevant projects of your jurisdiction, from within your CIPs or your general plans? With that, that really concludes my presentation. This is a lot to bite off at one meeting. It's not all going to happen today. You all don't have to answer every single question on the list, but if there's 1 or 2 that call to you, please provide the feedback verbally. You can follow up with emails to me if you like, and you can expect to see this at future TAC agendas and with further discussion going forward. So I don't know if our chair would like to facilitate some Q&A, or if he'd like me to do it. Either way is fine.
Well, we'll start with the raised hand and we'll see where we go from there. Nancy?
Yeah. So thanks, James, for really kind of thinking beyond, right? And I think, it started when the SCTA looked at the call for projects here last couple of years ago. So you're right, there is a lot here. And I guess I would say kind of big picture, each jurisdiction has a council which turns over and the board of supervisors which turns over. And therein lies, I think, at a local level, really how priorities change. And so it's really hard to pinpoint, priorities on a 5-year timeframe, just say, right? So I think that's something that we should think about as a group, right, going forward. And I think whatever we decide to do, James, I don't want to make it a complicated process, right? So I want to be able to keep the jurisdictions engaged and feel like there's value in whatever process we establish, right? I don't want to establish a process where we're second guessing ourselves and we're beginning to wonder, well, what's the value in this, right? So I will just lead with those kind of general comments. I think you've heard a lot about my input on number 4. I think the process for us, for Santa Rosa, it was a bit challenging for us because frankly, we didn't know the rules before we submitted the projects to you all back 2 summers ago, right? And that turned out to be a challenge for us. So I'll stop there because there are many other folks on the call and just, yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in? Well, I'll throw something in, particularly regarding number 4 and the process. You've all probably heard me. It was a little difficult for me to understand the benefit. It all worked out really well, I think, and the end result was good. I struggle as a small city, spending the time preparing applications for a bunch of projects where I'm only going to get 1 or 2. I have a really hard time doing long-range planning of CIP projects. We have so much on our plate at any given time that trying to get them done and out the door and that type of thing makes it really hard to do a lot of long-range planning. And I wouldn't want to find ourselves short or have our elected officials see a shorter list from one agency versus another because we just don't have the bandwidth to really plan things out really well. So that's just a little bit of input on that one. I guess, and I'm sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself, James. The combining of lists and such, is this for ease of our use, ease of elected officials or the public to be able to see these things? What's the ultimate goal there?
So I think the answer to that is all of the above, right? And so the goal, I think, starting with this group is that how can we work better together to share information, right? And how do we get to a point where we're not only doing that, robust planning piece well, we also have these projects that when funding comes available, we're going to be able to, put those forward as great candidates to be funded, right?
Okay. So then kind of following up on what Nancy said is understanding the rules, or in this case, understanding what SCTA is looking for. And I know you're doing it for us, it's not for you, but so that we're all kind of putting forth the right projects that fit into the right categories. And that we're providing the, roughly the same level of information. I think that would be really helpful in that process. Steve?
Yeah, kind of following that up. I mean, I think one of the issues we had is that, we're trying to guess what the rules are when we're doing this long-term planning and what kind of funding opportunities might be in front of us, and then tailoring projects to fit those funding opportunities. We're used to seeing a funding opportunity, a call for projects come out, what the criteria is for selection, all that stuff, and then we can find projects that fit that opportunity. The long range stuff kind of puts some tripwires in front of us because we're not sure if we're actually putting the projects that would compete well for those projects relative to what else is out there, James. I think that was one of the issues that we struggled with. I mean, I get that it really is important for everybody to have something on the table that can take money when it shows up if it's tailored right. But there's a lot of money and a lot of programs that show up that we're kind of, you got to craft a project that fit that funding opportunity, I guess is the best way for me to say it. And this last time around, it was kind of backwards of that, you know, from our perspective, right? And so that would be the only critique I would have, is that we kind of we had the front door open, but inside we were all grinding away at trying to figure stuff out. And, you know, the several iterations of project input and stuff like that. And yeah, maybe this is the way we got to go, and we got to be prepared for that. But it is a change from our past practices.
Yeah, so let me give a little response to that. So, because I've heard the same thing from Nancy, Larry, and Steve now, and I've heard it loud and clear before this meeting as well, right? So and I totally get where you're coming from. I agree with it. I think we will have a better known process going forward. The intention here was to really do what hadn't been done before, which is like, tell us what your priorities are, and then we're going to fund your priorities, right? And I think we got there at the end. There was a major messy middle there, but at the end of the day, you know, that plan that moved forward through the SCTA board was very broadly accepted across the county. So we will do better as SCTA staff to make a process more transparent up front. I guess my input, or the question that was, you know, being more proposed to this group on topic, is not that, you know, how the funds were, or how we asked what your priorities were without telling you how we were going to decide where the funds went. My questions are more around, how did it work with the way, you know, you submitted these Word documents to us. We populated them in spreadsheets. We gave these spreadsheets back to you. You saw how the layout went. How did that process work with regard to managing the information? And then also, you know, what on that list that we didn't fund, should we be, you know, looking around trying to help you figure out how to fund that? And you know, what do we do with the rest of that list? Do we, next time a next funding opportunity comes in, and there's going to be a few next year, there's going to be a bunch more the year after that, they're not going to stop, right? But do we continue to do, here's the rules, we do a call for projects, here's the rules, we do a call for projects, which we can do, and we'll look for opportunities to combine getting the rules to you up front. But how do we want to do that process piece, or that collaboration piece between us?
Edie?
So then I think you partly answered my question, but just to make sure, are you looking for really at the end of this thing that we do, which is the start, and a consultant is going to be involved. I saw that in the staff report, you mentioned it, that you're looking to develop a system and a business process, and from there may spring a decision-making tool or process. And that'll be done in a year or so that we could be ready for stuff. Kind of like, besides the decision-making part, do you imagine something like a CalSmart? So just having been in it, I'm reminded of that because we report in it. I can't imagine reporting in it quarterly, I'll tell you that now. I mean, hopefully it's not exactly CalSmart, but if it was, then we got used to it. Okay, fine. But is that what you're going toward? Is that the goal, where we all put information in something that's a CalSmart-like thing or FMS thing, so that it spits out reports that can be looked at? Somehow, maybe you can build in criteria. It's something that we're all looking at, that has the same inputs. Is that what we're trying to get toward? And the questions you're asking us now is to shape that RFP that'll go to someone that will respond and make this thing for us.
Yeah, so CalSmart is not what the goal is, right? And we don't know if the goal is a robust database or if the goal is some more streamlined, set of tools similar to what we're using right now, where we just shrink down the number of total lists so that we're managing the information more effectively. There is I think CalSmart type system where there is a user portal for each jurisdiction that submits the data to us directly. I think that would be the highest level of new tool that we would have. And I think the lowest level would be something similar to what we have now, where there's some emailing exchange of data that occurs. And that is yet to be determined who should be, inputting data and how we're going to move it back and forth. I'd love to hear, like, if some of the jurisdictions have, a database for their CIP or for their project delivery or for their planning that's working really great for them, that they could see it being scaled. That's something the SCTA could look at, or at least something that would have compatibility where you could do data dumps between systems. Those types of things, Edie. I'm not on this mission to get to CalSmart. It is that type of system is one place we could end up, but it wouldn't happen without a lot of, input from this group, wanting that or thinking that was the way to go.
Right, definitely wouldn't thinking about like mini CalSmart. But yeah, there's a place for Word and email, and well, not email, but yeah, all that too. There's definitely a place for Word and Excel, just because you can manipulate that. And then databases, of course, it has to be exact in its design, and it takes a long time and a while to do, but you can get information and it standardizes things. So, all right, you have to answer my question. But so a year, is that what we're talking about? That maybe you imagine an RFP to go out to a consultant for support to do this thing in a half a year, and a deliverable to help us all in a year after that? Or is this a 5-year process?
I think schedule's kind of to be determined. It depends on how big of a bite we want to take at this thing. And I think that the general scope of work for the consultant is going to be also saying, hey, look at this list of lists, right? What are other transportation authorities doing with this list of lists? Does it make sense to have a small database that's just maintained by staff that the jurisdictions don't touch? Does it make sense to try to have some portal where we get information directly from some web portal that each of you would have access to? It's all on the table. And as far as timeline, yeah, I could go anywhere from 6 to 18 months.
Thanks for that, Edie. Nancy?
Yeah. So there was a few questions that came out of the conversation with Edie, but James had some original questions about, oh my God, now I forgot him. Holy shoot. Let's see, what was it? Oh, so yeah, you were asking James just about the forms and whatnot, and how that the transmittal of, I think, applications that we did for the cycle, that last cycle of SCTA funding, right? That we just went through. Was that your question specifically on that process and how that worked? Just to make sure I have what you're referring to. So could you just respond to that?
Absolutely. How did that exchange of information go? You gave us information, we gave you information back, vice versa,
Okay. So I think, and Rob's on the call too. I think, it was a bit frustrating for us, particularly when we got to, once we got to MTC and what their expectations were in terms of, buttoning up those applications, because we went round and round, and it was frustrating for us, right? It had to do with, I think, formatting issues or whatever. And so I think that can be definitely improved. I don't really know what all went wrong with that, but you know, in terms of our connection with you, I thought it went pretty well. I mean, I think the plus on that is that you guys built the application from the last OBEG 2 program. So I think a lot of us already knew kind of what was expected. So I thought that was a little smoother versus when we actually ended up by submitting to MTC. So that feedback on that. And then there was another question that you had, and I'm not remembering what it was, but then when you spoke with Edie, and you were asking about, you know, what other locals have. So the city has a CIP database, right? And that was developed several years ago by, you know, one of our IT asset management engineers. And so it's been online for, I don't know, Rob, you probably know more than I do, but it's been online for a number of years. And we built into that database, there are several tabs about projects in our capital improvement program. And one of the tabs that we added probably about 6 or 7 years ago was a grants tab. And that includes all of our grant information for all the grants for our transportation and some of our water projects and creek projects. So we have that, and that has been something that, you know, took a long while to develop. And I think, James, you know, we can happily maybe share that with you and your team if you'd want. You might have been around when that was developed. I don't remember, but that's how we do it. And so, you know, I guess my point would be that, you know, especially the small cities, I wouldn't want a process to overburden them with more things to do, right? And so, you know, and I'll go back to my original comment, to make it simple and really the question is, what is it? What's the value you want from this, right? That you're creating? What value are you bringing to the conversation? And you know, that's been asked in another way, like, what's your purpose, right? So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Nancy. Steve?
Yeah, this is kind of not a question about the nuts and bolts of the application process, James, but maybe the decision-making part of the process. And there was some, I'll say it this way, some frustration about the black box that the applications go into and which ones were successful, that were unsuccessful. And I guess I'll propose this, which is that right now the decision makers are the SCTA staff and you know, oftentimes the other grant providers. But when we're going through this and you're using the word collaboration, I'd like to see the TAC be the selector of the projects if they meet all the criteria. You know, and it's something that we did, you know, not 4 or 5 years ago, but hell, 20 years ago, where, you know, projects were put up on the table and, you know, everybody from all jurisdictions looked at those projects, and from a regional perspective, were they good projects? And, you know, everybody were able to vote for their own, but they're also able to vote for or select projects from other jurisdictions and support those projects because of the benefits regionally, I think. And I guess from my part, I would like that kind of collaboration redeveloped within the TAC itself, where the TAC is actually making selections. And because I think you have the program professionals that are sitting right here that know their jurisdictions, one, but also understand the regional nature of their jurisdiction and the larger picture. And you're here to help us do that. But I think from the project and ground level perspective, I think that's this group. And I think there's some insights that we miss on those project selection opportunities when we don't engage that think.
So I'll just weigh in a little bit on that, Steve. The negative of that, and I think it's a good idea, and I think it works based on the personalities that are around this virtual table, it can work. But I've experienced some of those where it becomes individuals really trying to sell their project and convince everyone.
Yeah.
So that takes an effort to get get everyone to input in a more systematic way. That yes, it meets this requirement, yes, it meets that requirement, and not so much vote for my project because it's great. Because that those can get kind of ugly sometimes, even with a good group like we have here. But otherwise, I hear you, and it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, James, you weren't around. Sean, I think you might be the only one here that might have gone through this with this a long time ago, but you've heard me talk about everybody got a card of dots and you got to vote. So it kind of took out the arguing part. It was like, Larry, you put a project up and the group either thought it had value or it didn't by its receiving of dots versus elbows throwing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are ways to
I'm
do it, I
assuming
agree.
everybody's going to advocate as strongly as they can for their individual projects. I wouldn't expect that not to happen, but I think there's some collaboration that helps when, we support each other. That's all I want to say about that.
All right, thanks,
Yeah.
Steve.
Oh,
Ken?
so
Oh,
just
go ahead,
so
Nancy.
yeah, I was there, and I think to Steve's point, I mean, there's something about feeling like you're participating, right? And I think the spirit is there, and whether or not we all get to the finish line, I mean that's we all know that's not going to happen. But I think the spirit of that participation and engagement from all of us, I mean, that was I kind of remember that as a great exercise, right? It was that's it. That's all I got to say.
And there could be potentially a happy medium between that, where maybe the TAC isn't necessarily deciding, but going through that ritual, and it becomes one more factor that those that are ultimately making the decision weigh in on. Just throwing an idea out there.
Yeah, and I don't remember how SCTA reported that. I mean, that's a great question. I don't remember if it was just a matter of, Larry, here's what the TAC are suggesting. And, the politicians are going to do what they're going to do, right? So, and I don't, maybe SCTA has a better recollection of that, but yeah, so yeah, point well taken.
All right. Ken?
Good. Thank you very much, Larry. Thanks very much, James, on that. I have to echo what Steve was just saying, because that goes to one of my comments, was just trying to understand how the decision process. And I do feel like, we've got some really great talent, in this group, and having some way to provide some input on the projects submitted would really be good. And also, just being able, for me personally, to represent to City Hall why certain projects, got selected or why others may not have would help me in my job. And I wanted to say, one of the things, even though, for us, the city put in projects in the CTP, and we have those projects in there, I got a little bit of, I got my ear bent because it didn't go back to the council. And so if there's any way, it seems like the council has kind of sometimes a short memory on projects. And so if there was a way things change, that we had some flexibility to adjust the projects that are put there, that would help a lot. And then, if there's any way to get good consultants on board, that is a pool of consultants that the municipality or SCTA pays for. I assume it'd probably be the municipality, that we could draw from to go after these applications, because the workload cycles. Sometimes we have capacity, other times we need to get assistance, and that would be beneficial. So thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I'll weigh in just quickly on some of these items. How it went with the CTP, I thought it went really well. A little old school in the forms, and how it went down, but I mean, it was efficient from my end, and thanks a lot to SCTA and Shauna for leading that and being clear, and but it does feel a little old school. So maybe then rather everyone talk about this, just to answer James' question. Not necessarily whether it should be changed, but just how did the process go for everyone? I mean, do thumbs up, sideways, down? Is that going to be helpful for you, James?
Yeah, I think actually what would be, I get the whole group here is just so zoomed in on project selection, right? And this is what's going to feed into project selection and feed into applications. But I'm not getting the feedback on the I don't know, what's the tool. I guess the best term is the tool, right?
And that's what,
And that's what I'm not hearing enough about or enough. So if you're giving me the thumbs up or a thumbs down on something, give it to me more about the tool that was used than the actual, like, you know,
yeah,
process,
exactly.
if you will.
That's where I was going. I was going to kind of go through a couple of steps here, James. You're feel free to take the lead if you want to, but I'm trying to facilitate this for you so we can get some answers. So the first question is whether or not that process you felt was functional. Again, not selecting of it, but just the whole, you had to fill out these applications, you mailed in an Excel sheet, you mailed in your Word document to Shauna, she came back with questions. There was that back and forth. Did you feel like that process was functional? It was okay, or it wasn't so great? And I know that's very overly simplifying it, just to show of hands, because I thought it was functional.
So Larry, just so I'm clear, is this the CTP call for projects, or is this for the programming call for, because those are two different things?
Well, I think we're just starting with the CTP call for projects and the process that was followed, not the results, none of that. It was just how the process went.
Yeah.
And so what I'm seeing is it worked. So then the next question, let's say, would you prefer a more web-based, cloud-based, you fill in your blanks, the information is just automatically goes there, so it's not the forms and the sending? Who thinks that would be beneficial? So you think that's a great idea, you're kind of indifferent, or you like to keep it simple and low tech?
High tech.
Mona, is that a down or an even? That's a down. All right.
Yeah, if we do high tech, keep it simple.
Yep. Okay. And then there was another question no one really answered, and I didn't either because I'm not able to, which is the combining of some of these lists. Obviously fewer lists are better. I think everyone would agree. I think having a one-stop shopping for your program list, like on the SCTA website, so that if we want to go view projects, instead of saying, oh, I have to go into FMS or I need to go to whatever different site, it probably would be advantageous. It certainly would be advantageous for my elected officials to be able to find a lot of this stuff at SCTA. And I don't know if that's really what you were asking, James, but I'm just throwing that out there anyway. So does anyone have anything to add about combining the lists? And Hunter and Steve, we'll get to you in a second. I'm just going to try to run through some of these for James. I'm not necessarily seeing anyone who wants to combine lists.
Hey, Larry, on the list issues, I just, I mean, it's not a yay or nay on combining, but it just questions that swirl as I read that. Yeah, I agree with what you said. Fewer lists, so much better. But you know, when you speak of combining project lists in this context, question that comes to my mind is the manner in which they're combined. I mean, is it just for an ease of read, you know, a list of projects and a column of all the lists that particular projects are pertinent to, or is it a full-on combining of lists, which leads to a question of how much control does this group have on combining a list? Because some of these lists are are at the at MTC level, right? They're at a higher level, or are we just talking the local lists? You know, so I mean, I think it's a good concept question, but I think it needs more context for us to really bite into.
You want to respond to that, James?
Sure. So absolutely talking about the list that we can control, not the list we can't control. This is trying to stimulate your thought process on how much data is out there and how we want centralized data. So the external lists are not to be considered for consolidation. The external lists are to make it clear that that data exists elsewhere. So does it make sense for us to duplicate that data or to try to have some overlapping? When it comes to the consolidation, you know, the beautiful one list, right? How would we ever get to a one list solution where we have, you know, our CTP, our calls for projects, our programming, all of it is just one. Well, as a project advances through the system, you know, the data associated with each one of those projects basically increases exponentially, right? If you were to look at a CTP list that we have available on the website now, you'll have 4 or 5 different data points for that list. There'll be more that may be hidden behind the scenes that SCTA maintains as well that you should all be aware of. And so how do we consolidate those lists, but still have them be functional and useful, you know, going forward? That's really the question. And you know, yeah, it's not going to be decided today. It's just, you know, wanting your input on that. And Larry, thank you very much. Your facilitation's been great. You know, I heard loud and clear that, you know, the current process tools that SCTA has been using in the past are working. And then when I heard a request for a more robust tool that would have a data portal, I saw a very split. I saw a few thumbs up, I saw a few thumbs down, I saw a few thumbs even. So that type of general feedback has been very helpful.
Good. So we didn't get to the unfunded projects, but let's get to Hunter. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, I like the Excel and Word document. It's kind of customizable and you can kind of add different phases on there. I could see potentially having like a website where you like upload kind of those documents to it instead of emailing. I've done some applications for like FEMA where you put the information directly into this, you know, little boxes online. Those are a pain to try to save copies of and stuff like that. And it's not customizable and it's really frustrating and annoying. So I would, you know, really, until that's like somehow better technology or whatever, that, you know, I would definitely advise against. So that's kind of why I like the Excel and Word document, but maybe uploading those to a website or something like that would be as far as I could see it going. But maybe those could get cleaned up a little bit, but that's kind of my input. So yeah.
Thanks, Hunter. Steve?
Sorry. I guess to what end is all this for, James? Is it for end users? Is it for the public to be able to kind of, you know, I live in the city of Santa Rosa. I want to see all the projects that are being planned around the city of Santa Rosa. I want to see which ones have funding. I want to see when they're going to get built, because that's what I care about, right? Versus the folks who execute these projects, people sitting here, you know, where are we at in the funding cycle? When are we going to know so that I can answer elected questions? Or is it a simplification of this whole process? Is it, the web based approach where you upload Excel and Word and everything, and it simplifies your guys' job of collecting this data and assembling it and doing the various reportings to the CAC, to the board, and all the other users of this data. So maybe it's all three, I don't know, but that's one question I got for you. And maybe you already answered and I just ignored you, but anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think the answer was James said earlier, is all of the above really is what they're trying to do. Ms. Athens?
All right. So this question's for James. So James, we've talked about, you know, a vision, right? That you want to explore. So at your agency level, right? So have you done any research with other CTAs, and maybe if you have, is there anything that, you know, really appealed to you that you'd want to share with this group? Because I think for me, I'm having a hard time kind of visualizing, you know, the whole vision, right? And really the mission, right? And what the value is. And some of the other speakers have alluded to that as well. So if you had some information from the other CTAs of processes that are working well for them with all their jurisdictions, that would be really great to see. So that's just a suggestion.
Thanks, Nancy. Mona?
And just kind of just going back to what you're going to do with the existing projects on the list and why you're doing this. Is it because you're getting ready to do another call similar to this? And kind of what Nancy said at the beginning is boards change, and so priorities change, even our environment changes. So is there a way to go in and, I don't remember if we ranked our projects, like what our priorities were. Are there ways to change our priorities or take projects off the list and put new ones on? Or could this be an ongoing thing? I guess I'm not clear on that either, so.
Yeah, so there's going to be more calls for projects coming up, right? And you know, the driver behind this is not that. The driver behind this is as we transition from Measure M to Go Sonoma, right? And so as we're transitioning, we're looking for ways to do things better, and have you know, manage this information between our advisory committees and the board effectively. So Measure M has a fixed list of projects, right? So that it's just fixed. That's it. You're not going to add anything to that list. So we essentially do a call for programming. It's not even a call for projects because the projects are already fixed and decided. Go Sonoma is a completely new animal, right? It has there is two major categories of build bikeways and pathways and move traffic and improve safety that could be any project within the county that meets a very broad definition. As those projects are selected and advanced and move through the process, doing just a simple annual report out on a project that, you know, meets delivery schedule, doesn't meet delivery schedules, we want to be working with the jurisdictions to deliver those projects effectively. To respond to one of Nancy's questions as to what I was thinking or what my vision would be to have something similar to you know, what we have in our Measure M strategic plan or Measure M annual report for an info sheet, but have that updated on a quarterly basis. So we're communicating with each of you on the delivery of your projects so that the public, the board, and all SCTA staff can be well informed about project status as it's advancing. And we're not going to have a situation where Measure M has a fixed list and we're sitting on, like the LSP program right now, sitting on $35 million in the bank because those projects can't advance for a whole host of reasons. Within the staff report, there's one link to a CCTA list, Contra Costa County Transportation Authority. It is their quarterly reporting list. Something like that is very similar to what we have for our info sheets or our strategic plan or annual report info sheets. So I hope that was helpful, Nancy and Mona.
Yeah, so James, so you mentioned CTC, and I haven't looked at all the links because it was a huge packet this time around. So is that are you looking at Contra Costa CTA? Are you looking at anybody else? Just so that you can maybe have some things that you could share with us, that would be helpful.
So the one item that in James's list that I don't think we've touched on at all is the question one, what to do with unfunded projects. such as the grant applications for ATP. So I'm struggling a little bit to understand this as well, because we put together our project list, which were ranked. And then we've also applied for ATP. And so when ATP wasn't part of the SCTA call for projects, so I and probably others who applied for ATP didn't include that in their list. But yes, when they go unfunded, then obviously that's a need, because it's clearly a project the city is serious about if they go through that effort. So when you say what to do with them, I don't know. I mean, in my case, fund it, and everyone else's case, kind of forget about it would be my advice. But what's your question?
So my question is should we take those projects and then say, oh, wait, is this on the CTP list? Is it not on the CTP list? If it's not, maybe we should be adding it in there with the special asterisks like funding ready to go, or maybe we don't have a CTP list. Maybe we have a ready for programming list, but we don't want too many lists. So it's good to have that consolidation for what to do with it. The other thing is that SCTA staff, when we discuss this, we really want to reward the jurisdictions that are going after those regional, state and federal fund sources, right? So if you're submitting these applications unsuccessfully, we know that you're also submitting applications that are being successful. And so how do we figure out, well, we have this list of projects, we know it's a good project, we know it scored well on the ATP, maybe that should be something that is a high priority for the next round of Build Bikeways and Pathways in Sonoma. So those aren't facts, those are just ideas that I'm throwing out there to give you the backstory of why I'm asking the question.
I think personally, we can all do the thumbs up or people can weigh in. But my personal opinion is that is a great idea, that anytime an agency applies for a grant and doesn't get the funding, that it does go onto that list, maybe under our rankings of 5 with the asterisk and not ranked or a separate list. But I think that's a great idea. Does anyone?
Larry, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would say that it begs the question about first in, first out kind of a thing, though, that, you know, you could be doing the wallpaper approach, which is throw all kinds of stuff against the wall. Some doesn't get funded, but then it gets funded through Go Sonoma, versus some kind of, you know, fussing around or, you know, dot making or competitive arguing or whatever you want to call it, Larry. You know, there needs to be some sort of, you know,
No, I
work
agree.
through that process too. I think we should capture it. We absolutely should, because there's a lot of work that goes into putting that stuff together, what you do with it after that. So yeah, I agree with definitely with the list and keeping track of that project, and, you know, finding out how else we could fund that work, because obviously the jurisdiction who put it together found it valuable enough to put the level of effort into it. But how it ranks within the Go Sonoma programming, and, you know, Edie has a project that she has been grinding over for 5 years trying to get funding for it and can't, and then, you know, someone who dropped a project in before didn't get, you know, she won't get funding based on that kind of a scenario.
Thanks for that clarification, Steve. That's exactly what I meant, is to compile it as a source of information. And that's why it would be the asterisk, because it wasn't part of that competitive process. And therefore, I think something like, if one of those types of projects ultimately is competing with funding that SCTA has some control over, I would certainly like, and I'm guessing the majority would probably like TAC to be able to weigh in on that, because that would feel like it's outside of the rules again. I'm not seeing much nodding or anything on that, but you got me and Steve in.
Yeah, I think it's fine. And it's interesting. Ken was on the call this morning at MTC. And I think there's some interest with the MTC folks with the next ATP cycle to look at, and Shauna was on the call too, but looking at, especially the North Bay where we're not competitive, Larry, you know as well as anyone, at the statewide level, right? So their MTC is I think making a pitch to help you know, those counties that aren't, you know, as successful at the statewide level. So I think, you know, anything that we can do with you know, like your project you submitted, right? So if we can, with the discretion of the, you know, our local group, if that makes it seem like the most likely to get funded, then let's push it forward, right? But get it on the list.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? And if not, James, do you feel like you got enough out of this meeting? Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you all. Great job facilitating, Larry, and thank you all for chiming in and providing your input. I appreciate it.
Good. Probably to be continued. I'm sure there's a lot of questions there, but you got something.
Hey, James, before you leave, thanks a lot for coming to the council meeting on Tuesday. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it was fun, and you know, we're all gonna go party at 3rd Street Ale Works on December 8th at 4:30 to celebrate you, Nancy.
All right, I'll be there.
All right, moving on, item 6, measure M. Sean, I want to take 6, 1, 2, and 3.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 6.1 is on our agenda every month. I don't know that I really need to explain it anymore. It's your invoicing and obligation status. If you are outside of 6 months or nearing 6 months, you'll either be red or yellow. And Measure M requires that you submit invoicing at a minimum of every 6 months, at a maximum of once a month. We look forward to seeing your invoices in a timely fashion. We also like to see you appropriate the funds that are programmed, because we go through the effort of everything we've talked about in a call for projects, call for programming, and then we put forward a programming plan, and then we need to report out to the public on how we did. So this is one of the things that we use to track. Moving on to 6.2, maintenance of effort. As has been mentioned a number of times today is the deadline for your LSR SB1 expenditure reporting through, I think you're supposed to do it through CalSmart, and everybody should have reported that already. If you haven't, please get it done. But because you have gone through that process, you should have your maintenance of effort information available to you. There is a form in the packet that is to be used for reporting out on your maintenance effort for Measure M. And if I will be happy to send that out in a Word format. Right now it is, of course, in PDF because it's inside the agenda packet, but I will be happy to send it out to everyone so that you can use it in a Word format. Please let me know if you have any questions about it or if you have issues. And then moving on to 6.3, the Measure M draft for annual report, draft for review. That's just an informational item. You all provided that information to us. That is a link to the content that we have put together that will make up the annual report. So we ask that you look at it. If you are interested, verify that the information that you conveyed to us has been accurately conveyed in this draft that we've put together. This information was presented to the Citizens Advisory Committee most recently on Monday. And one of the comments that we did receive is that the members would like to see more consistent reporting between jurisdictions. As you are probably aware, everybody has their own style of reporting. We do give you the template, but within that template, you have the ability to provide your own content as to how you expended your funds, whether it's LSR or local bus transit or rail or whatever, or whether we're talking about one of the project specific programs, particularly for the apportionment programs, those programs where we just give you the money and then once a year we ask you to tell us how you spent it. they would like to see more consistent reporting. Some of the jurisdictions, for example, provide us with number of lane miles that were improved. Some of the jurisdictions provide us with a list of actual roads that were completed from X to Y. And some provide us with information on the types of projects that were included. You know, we did X many pothole fillings, and we did line painting of a certain number of linear feet. And what we are looking for, what I hear consistently from the Citizens Advisory Committee is that they would like to see more consistent reporting. I've reached out to the county. I will tell you that there is an issue with the county being the largest receiver of LSR funding and having the least amount of detail. And I know we've gone around and around about this. I understand exactly how the county uses their funding and how it's very difficult to track, but we need to be responsive to the citizens and to the voters. So I would like to work with the county, and we can do that offline, of course, in the kind of detail that we report in the future. That concludes that item, unless there are any questions about the draft annual report.
When do you want any comments or feedback on that draft? And I noticed
Next Wednesday would be great.
Okay.
Assuming that, because you guys provided this data, so it should be real straightforward.
Okay, so by next Wednesday. Thanks so much.
Sure, thank you.
All right, I was thinking I was muted and I was not. Onward to item 7.1, inactive federal obligation status. In the packet.
In the packet, and I would request that if you are listed here, that you provide me with a report by next week of the status of your project. I'm not going to go through it each time. It's provided to you every month. It's provided on the Caltrans website twice a month generally, and we have a responsibility to report out to MTC to make sure that we are maintaining effort on reducing that level of inactive obligations.
Nancy?
Hey, you guys probably all know this. I'm always the last to know, right? So it's my understanding that Ken has we have a new local assistance engineer, Jonathan.
I don't know that it applies to everyone in Sonoma County. I know that certain Sonoma County jurisdictions, SCTA and Healdsburg included, have had a new district local assistance engineer assigned. They're doing a bit of a reorganization over at Caltrans.
Okay.
I was going to bring that up under the roundtable discussion, but I'm happy to discuss it now, because I was going to ask how everybody, how many people got that notice? How many, is it applied to everybody? So I see Healdsburg, Windsor,
Santa Rosa,
Santa Rosa, Roanoke Park. I don't know if it applies to everybody, but it is worth noting that if you value the relationship that you have with Ken, it is possible to request that he stay on. If you wish to seek new relationships with a new district local assistance engineer, then I wish you luck, and we'll see how Jonathan does. I see a couple of hands raised. So.
Nader?
Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, on that subject matter, before I came to this meeting, I was talking to Ken, the assistant engineer who was hired last month, did land to go somewhere else within Caltrans. He's no longer there. So Ken back to square one.
Wait, what? No, seriously, I didn't hear you. Can you say that again?
The assistant engineer that they hired beginning of November officially left yesterday to take on another assignments with headquarters. So Ken back to square one, Ken and Ephraim. And another piece of information, Mabul, as of yesterday, that was his last day as a local assistant. They're replacing him with another person, have yet to make an announcement. Who's that person? So that's
Good to
just
know.
coming out of the press just before the
Well,
meeting.
yeah, that is hot off the press. Thank you, Nader.
I wish he gives me the information I need on my inactive obligation answers to those. I care about those more than the personnel stuff. But thank you very much, guys. Yes, and you're gonna see more of Ken, or at least
Right. Well, thank you very much for
for
the
this
update.
year at least.
I was comparing it to the game show The Price is Right. You know, I have Ken, but do I want to trade for what's behind curtain number 3? And I was struggling with that because you know the blender's nice, but I really want the new car. But now I don't have a choice, so oh well.
Blender it is.
All right, where are we, Shauna?
Let's see, SCTA funding
7.32.
program scheduled for implementation. This is just an informational item. I just wanted to remind everybody of where we are in the process of the SCTA funding program cycle 1. So we went through that whole call for projects. We did an evaluation. We submitted all of our projects to we submitted a certain number of projects to MTC to be considered for OBAG funding. Once we get the recommendations from MTC, which we expect to be public in the first week of January, then which is slightly later than we were anticipating it, but be that as it may, we will get the staff recommendations, and then SCTA staff will look over what has been proposed and then try to make any adjustments that are necessary for the projects that were selected or not selected, so that we make sure that the projects that we selected for the SCTA funding program are made whole to move forward. So that is expected to happen. We'll get the recommendations in January. We hope to have a final funding program for you to consider making a recommendation on to the board in January, and then we will take that to the board in February. Is that right? Oh, that's an early one, because there is no January meeting. So then we need to be able to start programming projects into FMS, right? Once we hear what those recommendations are. So there's a schedule in there that's just sort of to remind you of where we are in the process and what to expect in the future. If I may, Mr. Chair, moving on to item 7.3. These are informational items that were generated as part of the last couple of local assistance training days that I found terribly useful. I think that there was a lot of valuable information, and I wanted to make sure that if you didn't have the opportunity to attend the training days, that you still had access to these materials. So what you'll find is successful federal authorization submittals examples. You'll also find a list of 12 things to look out for that can be pitfalls in the federal authorization process, and then 2 different presentations, PowerPoint presentations for best practices or a statement of procedures, one from Ventura County and one from Tulare County. And
I saw that.
They were really valuable, and I thought an excellent resource for those who might be struggling to get through the federal aid process. So please consider looking at those, especially if you have new staff that haven't been through the process and are needing a little bit of guidance. While we were in the regional item, I didn't get it in time for this meeting, but we did have the local streets and roads, the joint local streets and roads and programming and delivery working group meeting this morning. It was rescheduled based on what happens with the schedule in November and December. So there were a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. Particularly well done on our PTAP. PTAP. PTAP 24 is up and or is being awarded. Everybody got their applications in, but everybody right now is current and or current pending, which means everybody's in good standing in terms of the PTAP program and getting their PMP certification. So that's good news. Adam Crenshaw gave a refresher on the new FMS. We're into FMS 5.0, and it does look very different than the FMS that we have grown used to. FMS is, of course, the fund management system that MTC uses to manage their federal projects. It's how we put projects into the TIP. And he gave an update again on how it works. So if you were unable to watch that, I have requested that he do another one in January, because we're going to be getting ready to put in all new applications and everybody is going to start struggling right then, and nobody's going to remember what happened today. So hopefully we'll get that, or they might even come around to us individually. It's not clear yet, but please keep that in mind when that notice comes out, that if you are looking for assistance with the new FMS, that you might want to attend any kind of trainings that are provided. Let's see, there was a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up.
Can I interrupt just for a second, Shauna?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm interrupting because I am going to have to jump off, but before I do, was there any word on ATP when the MTC recommendations are going to come out?
Yes, they will come out in the first week of the staff recommendations will come out in the first week of January. They're working on essentially the exact same schedule as the OBAG, because so many of the applications were joined for ATP and OBAG that they're sort of doing them together. So they will have their staff recommendation in the first week of January, and then commission will take action on them in, I think, the last week of January.
Okay, thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Larry.
Thanks, bye, Larry. Hey, Shauna, so you jumped off that call, but one of the, I think, I don't remember what CTC she was with, but she asked if Adam could do a special training session with her jurisdiction. So I think as we get closer, so that might be something that we want to consider, having Adam do maybe a quick virtual session with us here January, February.
Yeah, if we can get that. I don't know that he's going to be, I mean, I suspect that the person that was requesting it was probably from VTA, and they're giant. So we'll see if MTC is willing to do it for everybody or just the big ones. But yeah, I've already put in my request for that. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, Nancy. Let's see. For CalSmart reporting, they wanted us to remember that for your SB1 and ATP projects, that your quarterly reporting is due again in January. So be on the lookout for that. So that's CalSmart again. Let's see. They wanted us to review projects. If you were on the CTC allocation list, there's a list of CTC allocations for the entire year. If you're on the list, review your projects to ensure that the project information is reflected accurately. If projects are listed in this list, they will have some sort of CTC action this year. So if you're expecting any kind of CTC action, then it should be on the list. That being said, it does not include shop projects on the list. If you have other stuff, then make sure you're checking that CTC allocation vote list. For the annual obligation plan for 22-23, they mentioned that STP is slightly oversubscribed, which means that if you have not submitted your request for authorization by the December 1st deadline and you don't receive, or if you don't receive your authorization by January 31st, which is the regional requirement for getting your authorization to proceed, then by January 31st, then you will be pushed out to the first come, first serve. And then you're getting you got to cross your fingers that you're going to get funded. So if you meet the deadlines, then you are guaranteed that your funding will move through. All right, I took notes on my actual agenda packet and I summarized them. So let me just make sure. I think that's everything that I needed to address. The other thing that I thought was regionally important was an email that I sent out earlier this morning about the executive order that establishes standard practices for tribal consultation. It applies specifically to federal agencies, but you can expect that those federal agencies will be passing down those requirements to those who receive federal funding. So it is worth your effort to understand what those requirements are so that you can reach out to tribes to do appropriate and accurate consultation. With that, I am at my spiel, I think. So since we lost our illustrative chair, the last thing on my list is, on my informational list, is bicycle funding opportunities. There is an insert in your agenda. You can look at that. Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask you a question about the tribal stuff?
Sure.
Just off the top of your head, is it any different than what we already have in AB 52 or is it AB 54?
So AB 52 is a
No.
state requirement,
Right.
and it's
Yep.
probably not too much different. What
Okay.
the biggest difference that I saw is that it requires the federal agency to identify someone who is responsible for tribal consultation, identify a staff member, and it lays out the practices for what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
So
We can dig into it, Sean. I didn't know if there was just some shiny thing that was floating on top that you saw.
No, I mean, what I saw was that it's standardizing it and it's going to get handed down, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it applies to the federal agencies directly, but it's going to filter down. So better to be aware of it now than to be surprised by it when you get to the point of, oh, we sent out a letter and now they want all this stuff from us. When if you know that this is coming, you reach out to them earlier and you don't have that stymie your project at the 11th hour.
Thanks.
So that brings us to number 8, which is the SCTA RCPA board meeting agenda, which we actually have because it is week after next. So Drew, do you want to bring that up? And then we'll move into the roundtable.
Alrighty. Yeah, let me go find it. 1 second. Oops. Alrighty, do you see that? The margin, perfect. Oops. Alright, so here's the board agenda. It was in the packet, and if there's any questions or if there's anything that Shauna would like to highlight.
So there are a number of resolutions for outgoing board members. And we're expecting that we will learn who our new board members will be. We don't know exactly who those will be just yet, but we are looking forward to seeing who will be joining us. As far as SCTA items go, we've got a contract with Fair and Peers on the travel model, which Chris has been updating us on pretty regularly. There's a number of Measure M cooperative agreements and appropriation requests that are being considered. And then, as James mentioned earlier, we brought it to you last month, which was the project delivery history. Brought that to you. We're taking it to the board in December, so that they get that same report before we get to the point where we're actually programming again. We keep them up to date twice a year on that project programming history. Those are all the consent items, and then under the regular items, got a consideration for Hearn Avenue Interchange Cooperative Agreement with Caltrans and Santa Rosa. SCTA is partnering with the city to help deliver that Hearn Avenue Interchange project. And there's also a consideration for Resilient State Route 37 update. And then there are RCPA items that I can't speak to, but Tanya can and Ross can if it's necessary. So with that, I would take any questions that you have on the agenda. Not seeing any hands raised, we'll go ahead and move on to the roundtable discussion. So we have this every month because we're trying to be more collaborative and make sure that everybody is working together to deliver the best projects that we can in Sonoma County, and to make sure that we have, that we're using all of our best resources, as was mentioned earlier today, that the TAC is a wealth of knowledge and we like to use each other to make sure that we are all being successful. So with that, anybody that wants to bring up anything about grants being pursued?
Well, so Shauna, you know this, and James know this. Our consultant for Hearn Avenue Interchange submitted the LPP competitive and formula applications, Monday or Tuesday this week for Hearn, and that's all part of the funding strategy that has been developed in partnership with SCTA and the city, and so hopefully we'll be successful on that. So yeah, a lot of grants that we haven't yet heard from. I mean, there's a lot, the HSIP and the Safe Streets for All, we haven't yet heard from, and those for the city. I'm trying to think of anything else we're looking at. The RAISE grant has just been released, the NOFA for that. And I actually, James, this is kind of to you. I had a voicemail into David. I don't know if he's out of the office. I need to get an answer from him. Jason's asking me a question, so maybe you and I can chat after this meeting if you wouldn't mind, because I want to give Jason a response to his question.
David is out sick.
Oh, okay. So maybe James, if you wouldn't mind, I could give you a call or whatever's easier, but I'd like to follow up with you on Jason's question.
Yeah, let's do that. Mona.
So I didn't know at the last meeting, but we did end up applying for the SMART grant, which is the DOT grant for the strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation. So it's a planning portion of it's a stage 1 grant to plan out the possibility of upgrading all our cabinets, and then getting rid of loops, putting video detection system, and eventually going to a traffic management system. So yeah, we got that application in, and also we did get a letter of cooperation from Caltrans, because we do have a lot of Caltrans signals along those corridors. So we'd like to bring Caltrans in on it also.
Anybody else have any other discussion about grants being pursued? All right. Anybody had any bid openings recently? It's December, right?
Yeah, no bid openings, but hopefully most of you are aware, I mean, just material supply issues, right? Sire was purchased by Vulcan, and we've been going through a few iterations of issues with quality control stuff with them. So just heads up if your contracts are being supplied with AC or other products like that, pay a little attention to what's going on there.
Yeah, we've had success with their dryer drum plant, but not their batch plant.
Yep. Same here. So just some execution issues with some of our larger contracts, I guess. This year's pavement preservation program, Argonaut was the successful bidder, and they have drugged their toes all over the place, and we still have a few roads left to do, and it's really not really good paving weather right now. So so some of those issues, and we talked about this a little bit, a few years ago when SB1 was coming up, that with all this extra money, we might start taxing some of the contracting capability here locally, right? We might be touching that here a little bit. I don't know. Because there's a lot of the bigs that we call, brothers and construction, and these are the gelati folks who have some pretty significant contracts elsewhere that, the allocation of their resources are getting spread pretty thin for us. So that just kind of expect that kind of stuff, I think, maybe looking ahead here as we keep moving down the road on SB1 and Measure M and Go Sonoma and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, it's kind of a good problem to have that we have lots of projects hitting the ground, but there's some bumps in the way there too.
Yeah, we have a roller compacted concrete project on Fulton Road that they're getting ready to do a test section on in our yard to test it out. So that's pretty exciting. That's going to be our first roller compacted concrete project. So that should be coming up soon.
Yeah. Hey, Robbie, keep us in tune on that one when you guys get going. We'll definitely send our lab guys out there. Maybe.
Yeah, Andrew's in touch with Vic all the time. So yeah.
Cool. Yep. Just for us pavement geeks,
Awesome. Okay, is there any other business? Because if not, we need to wish Nancy a final and fair farewell.
So thank you, Shauna. And Rob is here for good reason. He's gonna pinch hit for me or come off the bench, and I prefer that one until they fill my position, which I'm hoping will be early Q1 in 2023. So Rob will be in there for a bit, but have patience with him. He's got a lot to absorb with this and all the other stuff he's got going on. So he will need your patience. Yeah.
And the recruitment is open right now. So if anyone knows people interested in the transportation planning position, spread the news.
Yep.
Congratulations, Nancy.
All right. Thank you, guys. It's been a fun ride.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Nancy.
Yes. Thank you, guys. It's been a great journey. Appreciate it all.
Okay, well, if there isn't any further business, then we are adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody.
Likewise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.